Let's do it.
This is my friend Andrew Cardin. He's going to be doing the welding today, and I'll be doing the filming. It's a 2-inch socket weld, carbon steel pipe, schedule 40. We're going to put it in the overhead position and use both hands. Here's a really quick summary of the video. First, we're going to do a little fit and tack, making sure it's pretty straight. Put it up in the overhead position, weld one side with the right hand, one side with the left hand, using different size wires on the root. Then we'll fill and cap, and then do a little cross-section cut, polish and etch, and take a look at the penetration. And that's it. Let's get into it. There's three really quick points I want to make about socket welds. Number one is you need to get a straight cut. Number two, you're going to gap it. You got to have a gap. And number three, you got to use at least 2 passes to comply with the codes. All right, to get a gap, to get the right gap, you butt it up with that straight cup, pull it back a little bit. That's too much. So we're going to close that up into roughly an 1/8 inch gap. You got to follow the code though, whatever it requires. And we want to get it straight and put a tack 180, rotate it 90 degrees, get a couple more tacks, and then put it up in position, and we're going to weld it out.
Andrew's doing the welding today, and he's propping with a TIG finger instead of walking the cup. The ones that you do in position and not on the tripod vise are often in kind of tight spots, and walking the cup's not really practical. Or they're in a corner and where you have to switch hands, right hand and then left hand. That's what we're doing today. Freehanding, switching hands. Let's do it.
The right-handed side, we're using a 1/8 filler wire, ER70S6, and you'll watch here as Andrew just bears down right on the tip of that wire and moving along at a not super fast, but not really slow either. We use quite a few amps on this first pass. Now, normally about 140 amps would probably do it, but we're kind of experimenting and seeing if we can pick up the travel speed. It's worth noting that if you're working off a weld procedure, you can't just pick your amperage. You have to follow the guidelines. You've got to stay within the amperage ranges of the welding procedure. But again, we're experimenting, trying to learn something here. We're going to cut and etch at the end too, just to see what happened there. The flex lock torch is really nice when you're switching hands like this. So Andrew's going to switch over to the left side now, and he can get pretty much any angle that he needs. And you can kind of do the same thing with a flex head torch, but you can only flex it so many times. So this is left hand and with a 332 filler. Trying to push just a little bit in there, but it only takes so much. Most socket welds done in the field, other than a pipe shop or something like that, will be done with a dry rig, a scratch start rig. We're using a foot pedal today, but we're using it like a switch. So that's the root pass. We're going to clean it up real quick with a drill motor and a wire wheel. Kind of an easy way to do something like that. I'm going to turn it all the way down to 125 for the second pass. I'm not really going to let it cool much. Just going to go ahead and jump on in there. When it comes to minimum fillet weld size on socket welds, there are some numbers in the code books based on wall thickness. Then there's also inspector's preference. And so a lot of times on a schedule 42-inch like this, 2 passes would get you there, but we're going to do 3. If we were feeding just a little bit extra in here or even going up to a 532 filler, could probably have done it in 2. But sometimes they want them all the way out to the lip and then some practically. So we're doing 3 passes. And just know you gotta go with the flow on the job site you're on. If you got an inspector that demands it be taken all the way out to the lip and with a convex weld, then that's kind of what you have to do. But just know that sometimes it can be done in 2. Another thing to note is sometimes you kind of want to weld a quarter at a time to prevent excessive distortion, especially on stainless socket welds, because those things will draw a lot more. But if this was in a corner, you're kind of limited to what you can do. By the end of the second pass, things getting kind of toasty, so it's time to let it cool for a few minutes before the final pass. That's usually good advice on a socket weld or any pipe weld for that matter. Things can kind of get out of hand with you if you go stop to finish, root to cap. Notice how Andrew's got the filler rod up toward the very top of that weave pass, and then sometimes it'll slip down on you like that, come loose out of the puddle, but you got to get it back up there. It's a whole lot easier to wash metal down than it is to push it back up. Still at 125 amps for the fill and the cap. Because we let it cool, the puddle just appears just a little bit cooler. Plus there's more mass on there now that we've got 2 passes in there. Switching over to left for one more run. and switching over the angle of the torch. It's going to be interesting to see the cross section, the cut and etch of this weld. It's a very good idea to stay in practice with both hands for situations where you just have to use your non-dominant hand. I don't do it enough. I plan on doing it more in future videos. Well, that's the final weld. Hadn't even been shined up or anything yet. We're going to go ahead and just cut it and polish it and etch it and check that penetration. And also to get a look at the gap and see how much it shrunk. A 332 rod will not even fit in there now. We started off with a good full 1/8. And on stainless heavy wall fittings, it can shrink even more. I'm going to get a quick polish to remove any saw marks. The better polish you get, the more delineation you get between base metal and weld metal. So this is the right hand side with the 1/8 filler used on the root. 1/8 filler was used after the root on both sides. This is the left hand side where the 3/32 filler was used for the root pass. And you can see Andrew hit the root on both sides. If any of the stuff I used in this video interests you, you can learn more at weldmonger.com. The TIG finger, the CK MT200, and the flex lock torch are all there. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.